Welcome to Lemon Stream, where we feature stories of the unknown, mysteries, post-apocalyptic fiction, and other weird stuff. So settle in, get comfortable, get ready. Here we go. The New World, Chapter 15, A New World Order. "Where's Stevie?" Ma asked, alarmed. "He must be here somewhere," Denise said. Michael scanned the room. "Well," he said, "he was out cutting some of the blowdowns for firewood this morning. I didn't see him come back." "Where was he cutting?" Sandy asked. "Down the hill on the south side," said Michael. "In the direction of the McSpadden's place?" said Sandy. Everybody in the room had the same thought at the same time. "We need to check him out," Ma exclaimed. "Yeah," said Michael, picking up his 12-gauge again. "I'll go." "How many McSpadden boys were there?" Sandy asked. "Only 3, said Michael, "that I've seen." "So we don't know," Sandy said. "Then we both go." "I'll go too," Darren said, standing up. "We don't know, so we need to assume there are more." Michael, Sandy, and Darren headed out the door, each holding their firearm at ready. Michael and Sandy hustled down the hill toward the south side of the house. "Hold up, guys," Darren said. They stopped. "If there are more thugs, they may already know we're coming. There may be some kind of trap. We need to be cautious and methodical. Michael, where was he cutting wood?" "Down that way," said Michael, pointing to the south. "Only about 1,000 feet, maybe a little more, right near the road, right where all those maples were down." Darren nodded and peered down the road, then scanned the tree line across the whole south side. "Okay," he said, "let's go up that way to the southwest. That way, if they're down in there, we can come up from their west flank and have some advantage that way. We'll get up there and spread out about 100 feet apart, then slow walk towards the road." The others nodded, and the 3 men moved swiftly but cautiously to the tree line on the southwest. They went about 600 feet into the woods, then spread out and worked their way methodically toward the road, peering into the woods in front of them for any sign of life or movement. The 3 emerged at the roadside without incident. Darren motioned them to him. "Where was he cutting?" he asked. "Right down here," Michael said, pointing to some downed trees by the road, about 150 feet to the south. The 3 moved to the spot Michael had pointed out. "Here," said Michael, "look, his tools." Laying in the leaves near one of the trees were an axe and a bow saw. "Hang here for a minute," said Darren. He slipped back into the trees toward the west, emerging about 5 minutes later a few hundred feet down the road. He walked quickly back to the other 2. "There's nobody," he said. "Nothing. No one out there." "Where did the kid go?" Sandy asked. "We need to search every square inch. He's got to be here," said Michael. The 3 men spread out again and walked slowly through the area, moving about 200 feet back into the trees as they went. They searched thoroughly, but when they met back up by the road, they had found nothing. "I didn't even see a footprint," said Sandy, "except a couple of ours." "How far away is the McSpadden's house?" Darren asked Michael. "A couple miles," Michael answered. "It's a good walk. I don't know why he would go there, though." "Maybe it wasn't his decision," Darren observed. "But let's look around here some more first. Let's look across the road." "But that just drops off in the swamp over there," Michael said. "If he was over there, wouldn't he have heard or seen us by now?" "If he were able," said Darren. Michael looked alarmed. He hurried across the road with the other 2 behind him. He stopped at the top of a steep embankment where the roadside fell about 15 feet down into a wet, swampy area. "It's just swamp over here," he said. "I don't see any—" His words trailed off as he peered into the swamp. His face was pale. "There." He pointed just a little to the north. "I think I see something." Michael handed his shotgun to Sandy and slid down the embankment. Carefully, he picked his way through the water. It was only waist deep at its deepest, but Hard to see the bottom to know where his footing was. It took about half a minute for him to wade out to the spot where a small nub rose up out of the water, covered with scrubby brush. On the rise, only head and shoulders above water, lay a motionless body, face covered in blood. Michael surged ahead to his little brother. He bent over and picked the body up, hefting it onto his shoulders, and fireman Carey style walked him out of the water. He struggled up the bank and laid Stevie down by the road. Darren and Sandy joined him. "He's breathing!" Michael exclaimed. The left side of Stevie's face was bruised and bloodied. His left eye was swollen shut. His hands were zip-tied behind his back, and his ankles were zip-tied together. "We got to get him back to the house," Michael said. "I'll carry him." Michael hefted Stevie back onto his shoulders and headed up the road toward the house, with Sandy and Darren right behind him. As they reached the house, Sandy ran ahead and opened the door for Michael. Michael stepped in and went right to the living room, laying Stevie out on the couch. One of the ladies gasped. "No, no, no, no," Ma wailed. I can't do this anymore." Sylvia hurried to the couch and began checking her brother over. "Hey," said Sandy to Michael, "let's let her take care of this. We need to get those bodies out of here." Michael nodded, and the three men went back to the front of the house. Ma and Denise took the children down into the basement. One by one, the men hauled out the three McSpaddens. Then they came back and pulled Shayla's body out of the bathroom and took it outside. "Okay," Sandy said, "now we've got to talk. Listen, we can't keep going like this. We need some kind of organization and planning, or this is just going to happen again and again. If we had pulled things together before now, maybe things wouldn't have gone down the way they did." Michael nodded. "Look," Sandy continued, "those guys didn't just plan to take our food and go home. They knew what they were doing when they tied up Stevie and threw him in the swamp. They had bad intentions, more than just stealing stuff from us. And if they hadn't been the village idiots, it might have worked for them. What if next time somebody tries to pull this off who has an IQ bigger than their shoe size?" "What do you have in mind?" Darren asked. "Rules," said Sandy. "Organization, planning, leadership. We're in this for the long term now, so we need to be organized if we're going to survive. I'm tired of things just happening to us. I know we don't have a lot of control, but we can control some things. It's time to stop being reactive and start being preemptive." "I'm all for that," said Darren. "Yeah," Michael agreed. "Sounds good. How do we do it?" "Well, here's what I'm thinking," Sandy explained. "We need to all have formal duties, and one of us needs to be an overall leader who can oversee everything and lead in the planning and in following the plan. And they can be a judge if we have disputes in the group, so if we get another Shayla situation, maybe it can be resolved before it comes to something like this. Everyone can take a turn at leading, so that it's all fair. Maybe do 1 month or 3-month terms, whatever." "Why don't you go first?" said Michael. "Sounds good," Darren said. "We'll run it by the others, and if we're all agreed, we can begin right now. The sooner we get some organization, the better." "I'll do it," said Sandy. "Darren, if we start this new order of things, I'd ask you to formally be our security person. We need a plan and rules to help avoid surprises like this, and things like nobody goes off to work alone. We should have known better than to let Stevie go out by himself. We've been lazy about the reality of this world, and it's cost us." "Not a problem," Darren said. "I'll start working on a plan tonight. We also need to do a funeral. So we need to pick a spot to set aside as a graveyard, probably right next to Gramps." "Good idea," said Michael. "But those guys out there ain't getting no funeral. We're going to drag them down the road to the Kenny farm and let the coyotes take care of the rest." "I don't think anyone will object to that," Sandy nodded. "Michael, see if Denise will go through all those bins of Gramps' stuff and see what's there and what we can use. You can ask Ma first, but I don't think she's going to mind. Yeah, Michael said. No problem. Sandy sighed. Let's do this, he said. I'll run it by the others. If everyone is together on this, we'll get it rolling.